I just wanted to make a list of epiphanies that I've had. I wrote down a list of things that have occurred to me on psychedelics, specifically LSD, that I thought would be interesting to share, and I wonder if anyone else may have had similar or these exact things occur to them. And the first one is about the cybersonic dimension, what I call when you close your eyes and you see this world that isn't relatable to anything in this world. It's more relatable to those trip out videos that you see, like this is what you see on DMT, stuff like that, computer algorithms that are eerily similar to the cybersonic dimension. And I think that what happens when you take psychedelics is, if you've ever played a Nintendo, when you put the cartridge in an old NES and you don't put the cartridge in all the way, or for whatever reason when you start the game up, you can see that it's glitched out. You can still see like the ones and zeros. There's like random letters and stuff in the game, but you can also see that the game is running properly and you can still play it, but you can see the code in some shit in the game. I think that that's the code, and the reason I think that is because when you're tripping hard enough, you can see the cybersonic dimension like forcing its way into meshing with what you're seeing in real life. It'll like the cybersonic dimension, whether your eyes are open or closed, you can see that like just meshing in. You can see the cybersonic dimension like in the wall, or especially in the sky. And that's like seeing the ones and zeros coded in the game in real life. It's like something, it's eerily similar to algorithms, the cybersonic dimension, and other dimensions, the City of Indigo, Arcadia, the Hexagon world, and then other dimensions that I don't have names for, that I've seen only a few times. Another one would be, it's like the reason that you see different dimensions is because your brain is like an antenna, and when you're sober, the TV is off, but there's signals going to your brain. You know, there's signals going to a TV when it's off. Even though there's nothing on the screen, it's still, you can't see the signals that are hooked up to it, that are in the air at all times. But when you take psychedelics, it's turning the TV on. Then you can, when you close your eyes, you can really see what's on TV, on the TV of the universe, and the channel is not always the same. Most commonly, the cybersonic dimension. It's the cybersonic dimension is the beautiful, like prismatic, like really well-rounded, like it looks like there's metallic like structures that are like random, like weird, rounded and sharp shapes. Like this end will be a triangle, and then it'll be round down here. But this looks like gold, like throbbing with radiant energy, gold, and then the stuff in the shape areas look like they're like blown with the bubbles. You know, like moving bubble, like oil in a wet parking lot looking shit. And these worlds are like, you know, real places. They're like signals on a TV. So it's like your mind is, it seems like it's coded algorithmic, because that stuff you can't relate to in real life. Your mind couldn't possibly be making it up, because you can see what your mind does when it makes its own shit up in a dream. When you dream, you can see everything in a dream is relatable to real life. And you know that your mind is where your mind is drawing its resources from, because then when you wake up from a dream, you're like, oh yeah, this person that I know in the real world was there, this thing that I know from the real world was there. Your mind can't just make shit up that's like completely not relatable to anything up in a dream. Or if it can, it's very, very rare. But the cybersonic dimension and all that shit, your mind couldn't possibly be making that up. That's like coded into what is like running the show. It's like what's on. It's like when you put in an old Nintendo game. So that's another one. Another one is the million years feeling. This feeling that I get that I've only had happen on acid. As far as I know, like 3 or 4 times I've had this happen. And that is this feeling that like I'm staring. I call it the million years feeling. It's when you just, it feels like you snapped out of, like, time froze. It feels like your body froze, whatever position you were in, whatever you were looking at. You just froze like that for a very long time. Not exactly a million years, but like hours. It feels like you just, everything froze everywhere. Nothing can move except your mind is still there, just like, holy shit, what the hell's going on? And then when you snap out of it, it seems like that memory of all of that happening was taken from you. You don't have that anymore, but you can feel it. It's like deja vu on steroids feeling. It's weirdness. It's like, what the fuck? It feels like you just snapped out of like time being frozen for like several hours. And I've noticed on the trips where that does happen, it happens numerous times. But it's very rare. And it's only when I'm tripping really hard. I wonder what that's relatable to. If that's like, that's like almost having a seizure, but not. If that's how you feel right before you have a seizure. I don't know what's going on there, but it's not deja vu, and it's not anything I know that has a name. So, I just call it the million years feeling. Oh, another thing I've realized, and this is probably not very shocking, that LSD improves your memory. I can remember things, and I mean while you're on it, not in the long run. Your memory goes back to normal, but when I can remember something from just about every single one of my acid trips. I think I can remember something from every single one of them. And when I'm sober, most of my days, they just kind of mesh together. Like something really significant has to happen for me to remember it when I'm sober, days later, weeks later. Weeks and months later. But with LSD, years later, I can remember things that would normally be mundane that I can still remember. On the back of my mind, like when I, scroll through my memory folders and look at what my memories are. And I think that might tie in with just in my opinion, those memories are just more precious. That's what Timothy Leary is talking about when he says, turning on your memory so that you're, like when you turn on, you're more engaged in, it's like it's a higher circuit experience. You're in your engagement and existing is what it seems like. So yeah, helps your memory. And the things that you see on LSD I wouldn't consider them hallucinations. Like my last trip with this big black light on right here. I have a 4-foot black light. That means a lot more business than one of the little 2-foot ones. It's like having 4 of them on at once. And in the black light, while we were listening to music, I could see these plants, these beautiful plants. My friend Greg was seeing it too. They looked ethereal, and they looked neon, and they looked, this is weird, but they looked both organic and like really tech looking. There was a lot of like tubes, and I've seen these tubes before. On the ends of each tube were these like they look like really sharp spikes. At least on the one that I was looking at the most. That was like, I was just watching because it was reacting to the music. It was like there was organic plants in here that were like dancing to the music that I couldn't see in the pitch dark and I couldn't see in this incandescent light. I could only see it in the black light, and Greg was seeing it too. And this right here looks completely different in the black light. It lights up like it's its own light source. It's fluorescent colors. So this right here is all completely black, and then these light up like they're their own light source. It's fluorescent, and this thing was slinking back like in like this, back and forth. Like it looked like it was going back like 20 feet. Like physically looked like it was going back, and then it would come back up to being flat. I don't think that that's actually a hallucination. It looks totally real, and like those plants, I really do believe, especially since we were both seeing them, that there's multiple other dimensions where there's these things going on that you just cannot see ever unless you put in a computer chip. That's another epiphany, that LSD is, it's like its own computer chip. It's like a thumb drive for a new amount of information, like in the Matrix when they plug in that thing, when he learns Kung Fu, that LSD does that. It's like plugging in this like information that allows you to experience a higher circuit experience. Like your senses, your brain makes connections that it can't ever make on normal terms on its own, and you can see things that are called hallucinations, but they're not. They're actually higher dimensions. They're actually like, it's like a derivative of this world. Like this world, there's even these things that this is in a different dimension than the plants. The plants I'd actually never seen. I just recently got this black light. So this is the first trip I've had with this black light on. I'm going to have to do it again. Hope to see those plants again. But there's another dimension that I couldn't see at all. I call it Bodox Central. The reason I call him Bodox is because of the movie Odd Thomas. If you've ever seen Odd Thomas, the person who wrote that movie must have known or something about this, because it's too close to what I actually see, not on LSD, but on tapentadol and Benadryl, that there's these things, and only in pitch dark. I can't see them with the lights on. I don't know if I've never tried them doing the Bodox in the black light, but they're in the pitch dark. You can see their outlines and stuff. So there's another dimension. I couldn't see those in the black light, but I wasn't on tapentadol either. On the LSD, I could see the plant dimension. So you see into other dimensions, literally into other dimensions on psychedelics. They're not hallucinations. Oh, this is a really weird one, but I think I've explained this one in another video, about how the past apparently, or the future can affect the past, and one example about this is that I used to trip out when I was a kid, like I was on LSD. I was having LSD flashbacks when I would focus on stuff, and I'd never even tripped before. And I asked my friend Houston, my friend Keith, if they ever had that happen, and I would be able to summon it looking at the ceiling, at this popcorn ceiling, also known as an acoustic ceiling, and I would start swimming around. It would look extra three-dimensional. It would start like waving like a wave pool, and I'd see faces and patterns in it. And I'd actually get them to lay down with me and look at it, and they're like, I'm not seeing it, but my brother Richard would see it. And in his future, both me and Richard did lots of acid, and Houston and Keith never did. I wish I did that with more people before I ever did acid. Because I don't think that's a coincidence that the people that didn't do acid in their future didn't see the shit swimming around and stuff in the ceiling, and I did. Because the hallucinations, I see exactly that kind of shit go on when I take acid. So I think that the future actually affects the past. And another reason I think that is because I have a lot of really crazy coincidences happen. They appear to be coincidences, but I think what's actually happening is your mind is getting an accidental telepathic taste of the near future. And I'd have to make another video of all the coincidences that I've had. But right now I'm just going to have one example. My dad was saying that one time that his nose was bleeding. He hadn't had a nosebleed since a child. And I said, maybe you have a deviated septum. And this was right before we went to go have dinner with my Aunt Kathy, my aunt and uncle Kathy and Drew. And then we went to have dinner, and Drew actually had he had just had surgery for a deviated septum, and I knew nothing about that. There's a lot of that kind of shit that happens, and for me, I notice things that are just like, what the fuck? I remember when I was listening to the song Lupin by Nick Grit in my car on the way to the pharmacy at Kaiser, and when I got out of the car, I saw a pill on the ground. It said Lupin, Lupin. Right after the last song that I heard was Lupin by Nick Grit. So there's connections that cannot happen and would not happen, but do happen anyways, that just are too spectacular to be a coincidence. And I think that's because the future does affect the past. It seems weird to think that, but I think they're not coincidences at all, and you're just getting a taste of the future and thoughts before you get there. I think that's more likely than they actually are coincidences that they have nothing to do with each other. I think they're connected in the way that I just explained. Accidental telepathy, that kind of ties in with that. When I'm on psychedelics, I have cases where it appears that we were accidentally being telepathic. Like one time I was talking to John, I was like, it wasn't raining or anything out, but I was like, you ever wonder what it's like to be an ant and get hit by a drop of water from rain? He was like, oh, holy shit, that's so fucking weird you say that. I was thinking the exact same thing. And there was another time with Greg, I was like, have you ever seen the movie Mr. Nice Guy? Jackie Chan, like, goes plowing through, like, this rich dude's house in a giant mining truck and over his cars, and he was like, how the fuck did you do that? I was thinking exactly that scene from that movie. And we weren't talking about that or anything. There was no hint that I was going to say that. And I think, and there was another time where me and my friend Michael said the exact same word at the exact same time, like 10 different words at the exact same time. And I've never had that. And when these things happen, it happens when I'm on LSD. And so I've tried in like 2 or 3 of my videos where I put the back of my head against because this one time on LSD, and the reason I think that this has to do with this is, I call them antennas. It looks like a road cone, and I can actually, sometimes when I take LSD, not every time, it feels like my head is growing into a cone right here. And I've seen it one time when I took combined LSD with the Pensadol. I was seeing, this is the one out-of-body experience I can remember, where I was laying in the dark in here, and when the lights were off, I could see, looking down on myself from right here, I was seeing directly down on myself right here, and I was seeing something I'd never seen before. It looks like a melted road cone. It's like this long, like laying down on the bed, like right next to me. And I think that those, like, grow longer and can connect. It's like in an ethereal dimension where there's these things coming out of your head that can connect to somebody else. For whatever reason, when you do psychedelics, they grow longer. You can physically feel it sometimes. So there's the accidental telepathy. There was one time in specific where I was looking in a mirror and I could feel different people inside of me. Like, one thing that I've had people tell me this numerous times, to avoid looking in the mirror when you're on psychedelics. Specifically, avoid looking in the mirror. I disagree with that. Looking in the mirror is very weird, and it's actually really fucking cool. But there was this one time, there's many things that can happen looking in the mirror on psychedelics. But this one time, I was like turning into different people, and I could feel, like, momentarily when I was turning into these different people, I could feel different personalities. Like, I was thinking differently, and I was my actual personality was changing, and my thought patterns and shit were changing with the way I was looking, and I was like, holy shit. Two weird thoughts came out of that when that was happening. One is, you gotta wonder if when an old friend that you had from elementary school changes how they look, you see them later and they look completely different. If they changed completely, they're not even the same person that you knew when you knew them in elementary school. Like if the person's personality changes as much as their looks do, and then you see somebody who looks pretty much the same, you can recognize them instantly. Like, oh yeah, like the kid in Sandlot. If you ever saw the movie Sandlot, the fat kid, who's like, oh yeah, well you play ball like a girl, that kid. And then you see the movie Lavalantula. He's also in that movie as an adult. He looks exactly he's the only person I've ever seen that looks exactly the same as an adult as he did a kid. He just looks bigger. He looks like a bigger kid. So that kid, he might not have changed at all. He might be like think and, be the same kid that he was in the Sandlot. Like his outer personality, who he is, could be the same person that he is as an adult because he looks the same. That was one thought that I had that came from that. Looking in the mirror and turning into different people and feeling different from it. And the other was that maybe the sperm in my nutsack, like I was feeling the different personalities of, like if each one of the sperms in my nutsack were to grow up and be a person that is separate from me but coming from me. And if that's the case, if that can happen, then the male is like a far more complex in thought person than a female ever could be, because she doesn't have the gift of life like in her. So at some point these little things are made in you, and I don't sperm, and I don't know if their personalities and shit can rub off on you, but those two thoughts came to mind. They're just not exactly epiphanies, but they're just speculations on, what could be, why that happens when I'm seeing those things happen in the mirror. Let's see, did I cover them all? So yeah, I have 11 epiphanies that I've had. There's probably more that I haven't thought of, but I didn't start writing this log until very recently. After my last epiphany. Psychedelics are very fucking interesting, and they're one of the few drugs that actually get more interesting as you do them, whereas most drugs are the best effects are right when you start doing them, and then they just the effect magnitude goes down and the dose has to go up to like, all right, with the same dose of most drugs, you take an amount and like this is a bar graph that I'm showing. This is the pleasure up here. This is the amount taken over here. The same amount, and then this is time down here. So this is amount. This is time. This is pleasure, and so you take the same amount. You have the most pleasure. The next time you take it, it's just a little bit less pleasure with the same amount. A little bit less. You keep taking the same amount. It's a little bit less. And in order to get your pleasure to be where it was again, the dose has to go up over here to get. You know, and with psychedelics, I mean, I don't do them every day. I specifically make sure the most often I ever trip is once a week, but still I feel that's a little too often. I think a really good amount of time to, at the very least, to give yourself of a break between trips is 2 weeks. 3 weeks is probably a really good amount of time. Just go 3 weeks without tripping. You don't want to do that every day. But the experience actually seems to get better with the same dose, with LSD specifically. That's a very rare thing. And another very rare thing is there aren't any really hard come downs with acid like there are with other drugs. That's why I could never understand why so many people really like alcohol. They think it's amazing and all that shit. Alcohol has so many cons. It makes it so you can't drive anywhere, or you're taking a huge risk if you do. It makes it so people who are sober don't want to be around you. It's highly psychotropic. It changes you, in a lot of people, in a negative way. It is not good for your health. It like damages your liver. It's not good for like pretty much all your organs. It's literally a poison. You have to keep drinking a lot more of it. It's very addictive. The withdrawals can be devastating if you drink for a long time, and then you just come off of it abruptly. You can get like, I have a friend, I'm not going to mention his name, who just get really shaky when he doesn't drink. And like get sick without having it. Same with smoking. Smoking is, I mean, those are both, alcohol and cigarettes are both drugs that pretty much nobody's proud of that they do. People that do those drugs just wish they could come off of them, wish they could stop, but they're so addicting they can't. Those drugs are legal. Those are the drugs they pick for people to, you know, what the government tells us we can do. Stuff that suppresses your mind and your thoughts and your memory. That's another really bad thing about alcohol, is your memory gets shittier. And then drugs that do the opposite, like LSD, is Schedule 1. Stuff that really does open up your mind, allows access to other dimensions, and allows your imagination to run wild into other dimensions and all those other things that I mentioned, and more things that I haven't thought of yet that I wish I'd started my epiphany log earlier. And LSD doesn't have any like hard come downs. Like the next day, like the first thing you notice when you take it is you feel wonderful. It's the first thing you notice is this just amazing euphoria. Should actually draw out a graph like what a thought that I just had, and make another video about this. But the first thing you notice is a euphoria, and then the last thing that you notice is this wonderful euphoria, and it just kind of stops happening. You don't feel like you need to take more, like with ecstasy, where as soon as it starts wearing off, like the second it starts wearing off, you're just like, no, and you just want to take more. That happens with a lot of drugs. LSD, it doesn't. It's like, it's just as pleasant going into it as it is coming off of it. There's no hangovers. There's no, if the stuff is made right. Like I've had LSD that LSD that wasn't made right, or was left out in the sun or in the light or something that wasn't very pleasant, but real LSD that's kept stored correctly and made right is probably one of the best ecstasies there is, both for your mind, for your spirit, mind, soul, and your body. Yeah, it's really developmental in your thoughts and your just everything. It's really, really healing in a lot of ways. I think that's pretty much all I had to say.